They use this in-group, out-group mentality to scare people and to launch campaigns, propaganda campaigns to dehumanize transgender people. This scares me. It should scare you. It should scare all Americans. You can separate individuals or groups of people from the rest of society and make laws specifically for them, catered to go against them. That is a scary step towards dehumanization. But I believe we are going to reach equality someday. We are going to be able to live our trans lives just as full as any other cis life. We are going to be free to be us, just as any other citizen of the United States is free to be them. Hello, and thank you for joining me. It's Brandi's World, and I'm Brandi Beckett. Today, we are going to talk about in-group, out-group mentality and how that affects the transgender community, especially how it affects the transgender community. Because in-group, out-group mentality goes hand in hand with dehumanization. When we see people dehumanizing other groups of people, they're not dehumanizing the individuals or the groups within their in-group concept, within their mentality of their in-group. They're not dehumanizing those individuals. The individuals and the groups that get dehumanized are always the out-group. So when we have in-group, out-group mentality, we're also in danger of having dehumanization happening onto individuals and groups of people. And that scares me, especially being here in the United States in 2024 when there's so many people who are pushing transgender people into the margins of society and instantly labeling us as othered and considering us as the out group or the othered. 2024. Thus far, up until April, there's been more than 500 bills written in these United States that are anti-trans, written in some way to harm and hurt transgender people. You can separate individuals or groups of people from the rest of society and make laws specifically for them, catered to go against them. That is a scary step towards dehumanization. And if they're able to convince enough people to look at transgender people as less than human, it is easy for them to start to pass more of these anti-trans bills. It'll be easy for them to start making it harder and harder for transgender people to reach any sort of equality or normality within society. This is literally happening right now, folks. Because we have an in-group, out-group mentality, and because there are individuals in our society who want to not have transgender people around, they use this in-group, out-group mentality to scare people and to launch campaigns, propaganda campaigns to dehumanize transgender people. This scares me. It should scare you. It should scare all Americans. It should scare any American to have any of us in the United States dehumanized. I'm not saying that we are totally there in the opposition has dehumanized us. That's not happened, not yet. But there are people who are fighting hard to make that happen. So we must break down these barriers of our in-group, out-group mentality. We must welcome in transgender people into society. talking we as a royal we, as a society, as humanity, we cannot let transgender people and transgender communities become dehumanized because they are labeled as othered and cast out into outgroups. So, yeah, kind of scary times we're living in, at least for transgender people here. But I believe we are going to reach equality someday. We are going to be able to live our trans lives just as full as any other cis life. We are going to be free to be us, just as any other citizen of the United States is free to be them. There is no difference. We are United States citizens and we are humans. And we do belong in your in-group. Within in-group and out-group mentality, we talk about the possibility of dehumanizations of groups of people and of individuals. And unfortunately, we have seen this happen in our history too many times. Too many times, propaganda campaigns have been launched against groups of people to specifically dehumanize them. Think about pre-World War II and during World War II. The propaganda that was out there just to dehumanize the other side. When societies engage in war mentality, when nation states go to war, they also launch propaganda campaigns and propaganda wars on their enemies. Because as a human being, it is very challenging to get other human beings to assassinate and kill their fellow human beings. Going to war, it's hard to do if the enemy is seen as human. So there's lots of dehumanizations before and during wars, but not always just during wars. This propaganda and these methods of dehumanization are working throughout society at lots of different times, and they're used as tools to hurt individuals for whatever prejudice reasons people are launching propaganda campaigns against individuals to dehumanize them. That's scary, but it doesn't have to be scary. We could easily be brought into your in-group. Transgender people are a minority in our society. We are less than 1% or less than 2% of the population. We're not very large population. So we need allyship to bring us back into the folds of society. In our evolutionary journey as Homo sapiens sapiens, we would have had a pressure to protect our in-group. And for the most of the time where we've evolved as Homo sapiens sapiens, we did it in smallish groups. Groups of like 15 to 20 individuals, sometimes expanding up to maybe 35 or 50 individuals. But we did not live in large populations as a species until very recent in our evolutionary journey. So 300,000 years of being Homo sapiens sapien, we started living in large populations about 15 to 12,000 years ago. And that was only certain portions of our species. We didn't fully start to become these huge, large kingdoms and nationships and stateships until very recent in our history. So for hundreds of thousands of years, we evolved in these small little groups. And we developed a very strong in-group, out-group mentality because we weren't always the top predator in our environment. Large saber-toothed cats and large cave bears and other large apex predators that we evolved next to, within the same environment. So we needed small group protections. And this would have helped us to be safe. We would have protected all of those in our group. We would have bonded with all of those individuals in our group. And that we carry with us today. We're very good at working in small groups with people and caring about small groups as projects and as personal affection. We do well with small groups. We can live comfortably in large populations as a species, and some very much thrive in a very large population as individuals. But as a species, living together in large populations is something very recent in our evolutionary journey. And it's not really a huge pressure that turned us into what we are today. So we still struggle with living in large populations. And we still bring this small group mentality of in group, out group in group, out group phenomenon of covet that is within the in group and fear and shun that with is in the out group or outside of the in group protection. This seems to be deeply inseated in us. It makes sense. We evolved where that would have been very beneficial for us. And now we find ourselves in large communities, in a time where our communication goes across the species, does not know borders or boundaries or small group, in group, out group mentalities. We communicate across all of our species. We are truly becoming a global species, interconnected with all of us. And bringing this in group, out group mentality to a global species is very challenging. So let me get back to why am I bringing this up and why does that affect transgender people so harshly? It has a lot to do with labeling and identifying and instantly placing or plucking individuals out of the in-group circle, the in-group bond, and placing them instantly into an out-group with a poisoned label. In our society right now in the 21st century, trans is a very polarizing word. That label, just telling someone that you are a transgender person, is extremely polarizing in our political fever today. That is scary. That alone indicates that people are automatically putting us into an out group. As soon as someone finds out that I am transgender, in their brain, they're going to try to place me in group, out group. And if that person, if that individual does not have a reference within their in group to say, this is where trans people exist in my in group. Here's where my grandparents exist in my in group. I'm comfortable with that. Here are cousins. Here are friends. Here are my school teachers. I know how to interact with them. Here are the people at the grocery store. Here's all the people I interact with in my life, within my in group. And I protect that. And that's what an individual is going to think, is going to experience. Now, if they encounter someone and they go, I don't know where to place this into my in group that I already have preset, I already know it's in my in group, it automatically gets placed into an out group. So out groups, not always scary, but often misunderstood. And being placed into an out group often is because someone doesn't understand what it means to be trans, or what it means to experience life as a transgender person. And when they can't associate or don't have a reference for those experiences for that person, put them on the out group. And being in an out group in these United States is pretty scary. Being a minority in these United States can be very scary, but it doesn't have to be like that. Social movements. What is a social movement? And how and why are we tying this into in-group, out-group mentality? When we look at the major social movements that have happened here in these United States, we have women's suffrage movement, right? The right for women to vote. That happened in 1920. Campaign to make that happen was going on for decades and decades. But that struggle, that social struggle, it took the in-group, which would have been all of the voting population, the men, to pull into their in-group. Women are also equal. When they recognize the equality of women and the quality of their vote, that social inequality goes away. So that's how we pull, and that's how we accomplish social movements, is by moving groups from the outer margins of society, the out groups, and pulling them into the in groups, the fold of society, the where we protect, where we love, and where we care. And that counts for individuals and a society as a whole. Civil rights movements in the 60s and 70s, and continuing to today, to be honest. All of those movements require in-group individuals with the power to pull in out-group individuals and make them within their in-group. That's what a social movement is about. It is taking people from the margins of society, groups of people from the margins of society, and bringing them into the folds of society. This cannot happen as a solo project. No group that is already on the margins of society can pull themselves into the fold of society. It takes allies. And that's what I'm getting at right here. Our movement as transgender community, in my opinion and in my view, is a very simple movement. It is a social movement asking for two things, and only two things. Asking for social and legal equality. And number two, asking for social normality. And that's it. Trans groups are on the outside of society right now. We are on the margins of our society. We cannot pull ourselves into the folds. It will take allies. It takes the cis community to bring us in to the folds of society and allow us the right, the privilege, the acknowledgement that we are equal, that we are American citizens, and that we deserve all of the privileges and rights as any other American citizen. And we deserve normality within our society. These are not hard asks. These are very simple asks. So we are just like any other American citizen. Transgender people should not be an out group because of who they are. So I'm asking you as an ally, bring us into the fold. It takes you and everyone else like you to bring us into the fold. So we should not be placing people in out groups and labeling them as othered simply because they express who they are. I'm a transgender woman. I express my femininity. I express my womanhood. Should not place me in anyone's out group because I do that. So I will leave you, as I always do, with this message. Love yourself, but more importantly, like yourself, and treat people the way they want to be treated. Bye-bye for now.